So, welcome back to 3rd Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and strangely enough we're actually on another of the Hobbits settlements today. I think I have shown this map off before, but I think it was an earlier version of it and quite some time ago at that, because this is Longbottom. You can see some of the Hobbit smiles around here as well, but also Longbottom of course well known for production of its leaf, so there's a little bit more in terms of activity going on around here than just the little Hobbit abodes, as it were. A lot more farms around the outer edge, and I do believe it is a lore-friendly battle as well, good versus evil, with good on the defence of course, and evil on the attack, or at least, you could be construed as calling Numenor evil, because that's the faction that the player who sent me this battle replay today was playing, and that is Beastie 70. So, we'll go through the attackers first of all. I mean, we will have a little look at the map, I suppose, first and foremost. The roads do offer a little bit of extra movement speed, but because of how winding they are, that's more incidental than anything else. I suppose, in a way, it is quite similar to Hobbiton because it's quite open. The main advantage the defenders have is the fact that they have a nice hill in the middle. Unlike Hobbiton, however, you can't approach it from absolutely every angle. There are choke points that can be utilised at the top of this hill, which makes it a bit easier to defend than the more well-known cousin to this settlement, sister settlement in many ways. So it'll be interesting. There's also a few areas as well which are a little bit better for projectiles for the defenders as well. So all in all, a little bit of an easier time they should have, but it's still going to be very challenging, and you would still certainly give the advantage to the attackers in a situation like this. So we'll start off with Swaggy P playing as Rhun, a very well-balanced faction in terms of they're a bit of a jack of all trades, but they do have a little bit of a focus around their armour piercing. I can only apologise for the dogs yipping in the background, but such is the way of things. Look, Gamperin, halberdiers, of course, Rhun don't have access to pikes in this submod, but they do have these halberdiers, which of course just add to that armour-piercing edge that Rhun have. Very nice for anchoring the line. Something which is very good at holding the line in general are the mighty Scion Rim. They of course have got the really, really high defense values, both in terms of their skill and in terms of their armor, especially shields as well. They don't have the armor piercing that the other units of this type have, but they're much better at keeping themselves alive than most others that Rhun have access to. Got some Gnar Rim as well, so they should be pretty good at laying down some damage. The fire arrows are purely cosmetic on the Gnar Rim, which is worth bearing in mind, but still, it looks pretty cool, and the flames do sort of linger for a little bit as well. We've got the Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen, which of course are analogous to the Blacklock Engineers in the sense that they have those body-piercing crossbow bolts, which makes them potentially absolutely devastating, but angle of fire is more important for crossbows, and given the nature of Longbottom, it probably will be more difficult to get the crossbowmen into a good position to fire, or at least right through the lines in as devastating a fashion as possible. But even so, it's something the defenders will have to be on the lookout for because of how devastating they can be. Cummel's chosen here, which is going to be the General's bodyguard. By bodyguard standards, this is quite a basic unit really of sword and board infantry, but they're still going to get the job done against most units. More Gamper, we've got some Eastron warriors back here. Interesting to see them once again. You don't often see them brought. They're actually decent for their tier in melee, but for the most part, because the Eastron clansmen are so efficient in Reforged, you don't tend to see the Eastron warriors brought, but they are here. It's a similar story with the Eastron guard really as well, in the sense that there are just more efficient units to bring as Rhun, but it's nice to see them nonetheless. But they're obviously going to be very, very vulnerable to enemy projectiles. Now we move on to Beastie's army, the player who sent me the battle replay. He's got some Numenorian cohorts here on the front in terms of heavy infantry. Among the evil men today, Numenor and Umbar are among their numbers, so they're not going to want for heavily armoured quality infantry. And the Numenorian cohort, of course, are at the very centre of that. They will be able to provide a good amount of damage on the front line as well as that armour that they are well known for. Steel bows, very limited ammunition supply, but that ammunition supply is, well, they're steel bowmen, so armour piercing. We shall see again if they can be used efficiently. They're a very difficult unit to actually get the most out of the steel bows because of how low their ammo supply is. So it'll be interesting to see if Beastie is able to do that here. Numenorian cohort. Narun and Iron Royal Guard are a much easier unit of higher end archers to get the most out of because they are really designed to skirmish with the enemy with their very high armour values, and also they have a slight shield value because of the shields they wear on their back. Difficult to charge down with Cav as well because they double as spearmen. All in all, a fantastic defensive archer. Back here, the Royal Legion of Armenelos, certainly a unit which shows the Cummel's chosen how it's done really when it comes to bodyguard tier sword and board multiple HP units. fantastic looking unit as well are the Royal Legion. Over here, our Pharazôn, however, is not going to be marching with his fellow Golden Boys, or Brass Boys I should say. He's going to be marching with the Pharazôn Swordmasters, because of course they have a 3rd hit point, the most devastating unit of heavy swordsmen in the game. Because of that 3rd hit point, it makes such a difference, and they are absolutely fantastic. Definitely a very quality focused army this, with shield guard, armour piercing spears, few seafarers as well for those javelins, Arthedain shadow bows with the body piercing, which they need to make the most out of that because they're not going to have it forever, and a few Belagai footmen just to bulk out the army as well. But definitely more quality on display here from Numenor, as you would expect, and I would imagine it's going to be quite similar for Lord Touchme as well, who is playing as Umbar. He has got some unupgraded Balaketh Axe Guard, so they're going to be a little bit vulnerable to arrow fire. The Balaketh units in general without the upgrade actually do lack a little bit in terms of armour, in terms of what you would expect from Umbar, but still, nice armour-piercing edge that this will give their attack. Alcarondas Legion, which are pretty much Umbar's answer to the Numenorian cohort we've already seen. Numenorian cohort trade in a bit of defence for a bit of attack in comparison to the Alcarondas Legion. That is the difference between the two. We've also got some Rhudaur Sentinels, which will be absolutely dominant in most pike battles on a front line. But we'll see, because one of the defenders is Lothlorien today. And Rhudaur Royal Guard, of course, which are the same unit, only with a burgundy colour scheme as opposed to a blue one. Balaketh Axe Guard and Alcarondas Legion. A bit of cavalry in the Alcarondas Faithful, so a bit of movement. I mean, Longbottom does have a wide open space around the central hill, so there's always the opportunity for some cav play. And there's also some Corsair fences that are hidden away. Moving on to Rhudaur, played by Y2K86. He has got some Rhudaur clansmen on the front line. Decent unit this. They do better damage than you would expect for an entry-level unit of spears, really, or at least a basic unit of spears. Nice shield value as well. Don't expect miracles from them, but they will perform quite well in a situation like this, especially when backed up by the numbers of the Rhudaur swordsman. Nice efficient unit. Again, quality isn't really their thing, but they do have enough numbers to make up for that. Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters, heavily armoured by Rhudaur standards, certainly, and of course they are able to lay down that damage at range. Spears in melee as well, so lots of utility. A unit that you'll rarely see Rhudaur not bring. And then back over here we also have some Witch Realm Enslavers, which are a fantastic unit of bodyguard tier armour-piercing infantry. And then a couple of units of Coltfell Maidens as well, which, much in the same way as the Alcarondas Faithful we've already seen, good for locking down the wide open spaces around the edge of the map in case of any sally outs from the defenders, and the Javelin Cavalry were really good at shutting that down pretty quickly. And then finally we have Valkarion, or Valsarion, I think it's Valkarion, but he's playing as Harad. Got some Southron archers, which again, just entry-level archers really. Going to be able to skirmish with the enemy, use up some of their ammunition. Any kills they get will be nice. Over here we got some Muhard warriors, numerous, decent in melee as well in terms of damage, but as much as their shield value is actually pretty decent, they don't wear a lot of armour at all. So arrow fire from the back or the side can be a real issue for them. That is true for a lot of Harad units, the Muhards especially. Muhard Beast Hunters for a bit of javelin action, the mighty demons of the desert. Some Southron Warband for a bit of AP on the front line. Champions of Nefrat, some Southron Pikes as well, and then back over here more cavalry. Serpent Guard, 2 units of them. We have some War Beasts of Harad and the Black Serpents. That is a big investment of cavalry for Harad, and it's a big investment of cavalry overall for the attackers in general. That's 7 units of cavalry all in all, so we shall see. I mean, they're definitely going to be able to dominate any cav battles which happen on the outer edge of the settlement, but I'm not sure whether that's going to be all that important. We shall see. Starting off with Hidden for the defenders, playing as Arthedain. He has got some dismounted Knights of Numenus, a really tanky unit of course. Numenus Gate Guards, we've got some dismounted Fornoster Rhine Knights, some Arthedain Pikemen, some Wardens of the North. I would assume that's Rangers or Troll Slayers, possibly both in this little gap. Over here some upgraded Marksmen, upgraded Man-at-Arms, more upgraded Marksmen. Excuse me. Arthedain Men-at-Arms again. Dunedain Peacekeepers, which were really good against the likes of Harad and Rhudaur and Rhun actually. Less so, however, against Numenor and Umbar, because they've got the armour to withstand the extra damage the Peacekeepers can do. Evendim Spearmen, again, like I continuously say, one of the most misleading units in the game. They look like high-end spearmen, really. They're not. They're militia spears. Upgraded armour makes them tanky by militia spear standards. Don't let that fool you, though. And then back over here we do have a unit of mounted Knights of Numenus. Don't know if they're going to be able to get much value off given the sheer amount of attacking cavalry that's on display today. We have Gondor, played by Stalin's Stepro. He has got some Fountain Guard, will be excellent at holding the line. Some Gondor infantry, upgraded by 1 tier. And that's pretty much that. Some Gondor archers without the upgrades, but they're just going to be skirmishing with the enemy, I would assume. Marksmen of Caer Andros, some veterans of Osgiliath with just the first level of upgrade as well. He's got some Raven Helms, a couple of units of them. Some Peneth Galing cavalry, again they're going to find it really difficult. The Mithrandir's retinue will do better, but again I'm really not sure how well the defensive cavalry can be used here. It still can be used well, to be fair, but it's going to be a real challenge for the defenders to use their cavalry as they may have wanted to. Wardens of the White Tower, Citadel Guard, again very similar to the Numenorean Shield Guard, only I think possibly slightly better even than them. Wardens of Minas Ithil for some armor-piercing missiles and some Nimlothian Honour Guard as well. And finally, the Elves are going to be marching alongside the reunited kingdom today, as we have Lothlorien played by the Warlord. So Lothlorien, of course, capable of dishing out very high amounts of damage at range and in melee. Loren-armed Axemen will be good on the front line for that. Some Spearmen as well to help hold things down. We've got some Woodland Protectors in there for javelins. We've got some standard units interspersed throughout as well. I'm not entirely sure what that would be. Could be any of them, really. There's some Loren-armed Swordmasters, some Karos Galadon's Guardians. Kindred of Celeborn are in there as well. Watchers of the Golden Wood, yeah. So all of the high-end stuff for Lorien, as you would expect when they're on the defence like this, and they've got more money to play with. 2 units of Mounted Company and a unit of Riders of the Golden Wood, though, so we should see an interesting cav tussle going on here. So it's probably for the best, actually, that the attackers did bring that cavalry, because they should be fairly dominant in that fight. But without further ado, let's begin. And yeah, it's a good thing, like I said, that the cav for the attackers is in such great numbers, because even if they have maybe slightly overcommitted, they're still going to be able to get the better end of these cav engagements for the most part, you would think. Having said that, a big part of that is how the Alcarondas faithful are used, because they really are the linchpin behind the attacking cavalry force, as we can see over here. They're really the only unit of dedicated cav killers. The war beasts are kind of an interesting one. I wouldn't really use them for that sort of thing, but Harbingers of Castamere are back over there as well. Numenor start heading off with Rhun over to that side. It'll be interesting to see what Umbar do. Will they split off half and half to go with the more lightweight Rhudaur and Harad? Will be a lot of AP bound up in those two factions, or will they commit to one side or the other? Rhun and Numenor already have enough survivability on their front line, you would think, especially with the Scion Rim that Rhun have committed to. Should be quite interesting. What have we over here? Yeah, it's going to be interesting, like I said. The Knights of the Numenas, the Riders of the Golden Wood in particular, could do a lot of damage, and they'll be really dominant against a lot of the enemy cavalry. Serpent Guard won't do too well in a fight against them. The Black Serpents as well won't be enough, really, because they're a unit of multiple HP Lancers, not dissimilar to the Mithrandir's retinue, and with more focus around speed than survivability. And then, just the fact that those Riders of the Golden Wood are horse archers. They may have been expecting to be able to use something like the Coldfell Maidens over here and just be able to keep the cavalry skirmish game on their side of things, but that is very unlikely to be the case if those Riders of the Golden Wood get a hold of them. There are Blackwolds we just saw there as well, Arthedain Rangers, so a good hidden contingent here, including Trollshaw Axe Throwers and Rhudaur Axemen. So of course Rhudaur can pop into existence with a lot of these very damaging units. Even the Rhudaur Axemen are damaging. Blackwolds, Rangers, Trollshaw Axe Throwers need to be kept in check lest they go after something like the Fountain Guard. And the summit of the hill, already they're going to be setting up a defence. Fountain Guard are going to be key to this as well. Very good unit for helping to hold the line with the damage they can chuck out, as well as their ability to keep themselves alive. Cavalry on the back edge, so perhaps going to use their cavalry a little bit more defensively here, the defenders. Which I guess, considering the amount of cavalry the attackers have, that is completely understandable as the attacking armies begin to roll forward. So Umbar are going to go right up the pipe, I think, and go through the front entrance, try and batter things down there. Harad and Rhudaur are going to approach from this direction, and there is a way up over here, slightly easier on the attackers, as well as having 2 armies potentially. And then there's the attack from the rear. I don't know if you can... No, yeah, this is clearly impassable terrain, this, but I would assume this means that Numenor and Rhun are going to come around to the back entrance over here and try to attack this one. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, Umbar, if they're going alone right up the middle, that's going to be really, really tough on them. They're a very hardy faction, Umbar. I'm not entirely sure they're going to have the gumption to withstand a Gondorian defence that's going to be backed up by elves and a few Arthedain archers as well. It's going to be tough on them as we go into ×2 speed here. I'm not entirely sure I want to make a cut, because at any moment the cavalry could scramble to the four corners and we could all of a sudden have a battle which kicks into high gear fairly fast. Arthedain marksmen rolling into position as well. They've got a lot of basic archers as well, the defenders, so they won't feel too dissatisfied about having to skirmish with the enemy, but they do need to limit that if at all possible. As Rhun and Numenor start making their way through the farmlands here in the western reaches of the map. Camel's Shadow Guard as well, which we don't see an awful lot from Rhun, to be fair. You tend to see the Golden Boys be the main focus of their army, so seeing a few units from Rhun that you don't get to see an awful lot of, especially the Eastron Warriors. There's also the Balkoth Sapphire Blazemen, which we haven't seen in an awfully long time, with those Falxes that they wield, and Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen, so some elite armies here. I wonder how much money the attackers were given. Questionable. My spidey senses are tingling already. But that's a scary force, attacking the rear side of the settlement there. These boys need to start organising themselves into a shape. Ones of the north going to get into place. Very damaging unit of armour-piercing archers, of course. And then over here, looks like the elves are going to take responsibility for going after Rhudaur and Harad, and I can certainly see why, because Lothlorien's archers will tear both of those factions asunder, especially with the right kind of unit. I mean, March Ones of the Wood, even the basic unit of Lothlorien archers, do decent damage. Something like the Cairn Amroth Rangers will be the stuff of nightmares for Rhudaur and Harad. Arthedain taking most of the responsibility for the rear entrance and Gondor for the front. Umbar getting... I'm a little bit surprised that no one's giving Umbar any extra little bits of support. I think, considering the amount of quality Numenor and Rhun have got at their disposal, they could spare the odd unit or two, surely. Rhudaur and Harad have got plenty of numbers, but they may need their numbers, because they're going to have to go up against the elves in a narrow choke. Knights of Illuminus are still hanging out here on their own, really, which is a little bit surprising. We'll see if the Coldfell Maidens try to take advantage of that, shall we? Of course, our crossbowmen trying to get into position. I mean, that's debatable as to whether that's a good idea. If these Gondor archers see them approaching, I mean, that's an excellent way to get some good value off of your very basic skirmishes. We shall see. Numenorian steel bows. Again, another nasty target, especially for the likes of Gondor, who are going to want to keep their front lines, made up of their Fountain Guardsmen, in good condition. So they're swinging very wide here, maybe being a little bit overly cautious here, the attackers. When you're the attackers and it's a 5v3 and you've got the quality that the attackers have got at their disposal, there's really no need to pussyfoot around the issue. Like, you're going to take losses. There's no getting away from that. The battle has been set up so the defenders at least have a chance, so you're not going to be able to just skirmish them down. It's not going to change. I mean, honestly, a premature attack on one side as well might siphon off resources to allow Rhun and Numenor a slightly easier path. We shall have to wait and see. Cavalry on the back end of the settlement. Arthedain's cavalry is still unmoving, but Lothlorien and Gondor combining their strength. A lot of lancers, 4 units of lancers, and then a unit of exceptional horse archers. Interesting to see if they can make the most of that. What have we here? Just a unit of Gondor infantry on the front, in loose formation with that first level of armour upgrade, so perhaps thinking, we're just going to wait for a while. Hope that Umbar decide to use any archers they may have to skirmish into them. I think, you'd have to be... Most players know that you've got to choose the right targets with your archers. It's less important for the attackers, of course, but you're not going to take the bait that easily, I would imagine. So they're still waiting here for the back end of the settlement for Rhun and Numenor to get into shape. There's a lot of quality over on this side of things. I mean, certainly if I were the defenders, this would be the side that I would be prioritising a lot of the strength on, because for me, especially given the defending factions that we're seeing today. This represents the biggest threat. Numenor and Rhun, really high quality. Rhun as well have got good quality, but they also have that armour piercing, which Numenor do lack in a lot of their units. It's a really winning combination for me. With only one faction from the front, you could maybe afford to skimp a little bit more on Umbar. And here we go, Gondor Arch. Ooh, hello. And they are going to charge into the Gondor infantry here. And this is the problem, if you have your front line made up of only a single unit of swordsmen, you can charge into it with impunity, really. I mean, it wasn't a huge amount of damage. It was going uphill. It was a difficult charge. It's melee cavalry as well, so it's not as if you have to deal with the problems that lancers can give you. Gondor archers, they're going to try to charge in again, but I mean, it's not... Again, if the Alcaron does faithful fall as well to basic infantry and archers, this is the main threat to the defending cavalry because of how dominant they can be. Really not all that much in terms of losses, though. The odd Gondor infantryman does fall. Might be for the best that he gets a unit of just spearmen or something on the front line as well. I mean, there are technically 2 choke points here that you might have to fall back into. And what have we here? Cavalry moving forward, including the mighty Grey Company, but the Grey Company getting absolutely savaged. They revealed themselves, but it's a little early for me to be revealing your hand on something like the Grey Company because you have a golden opportunity there, pun intended, considering it's Rhun they're going after. Lothlorien Mounted Company charging in, though, to the Eastron Warriors. A little bit, you know, poor organisation there from Rhun. It is only their Eastron Warriors, but that's a lot of losses they just took. Drawing the fire of the Arthedain shadow bows as well. Yeah, the Grey Company need to be retreated. Alcaron best faithful are over here from the front side of the settlement. Umbar, not entirely sure what they're doing. Corsair crossbowmen getting into position. I mean, yeah, this is a good target and absolutely the sort of thing they should be going after. Gondor archers from on high, shooting into the Corsair crossbows, and they are going to do pretty poorly. Under arrow fire, I can see the odd black-trailed arrow as well, which means the Horns of the North are firing in. I'm not entirely sure that armour-piercing arrows are necessary against the Corsair crossbows. They're going to do a bit of damage here, the crossbows, but basic archers only would be enough to kill them off, really. You can see over here the Coldfell Maidens moving over here to give some support. Pinneth Gaeling Cavalry, a little bit split that unit now. That Grey Company got damaged an awful lot. I would imagine the Shadow Bows had something to do with that, but even basic archers will do a lot of damage to them, of course, and a very worthwhile target to go after, because in the late game they could be a real menace for the attackers. Meanwhile, we do also have the beginnings of the assault on the Rhudaur and Harad side of the field as well. Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters getting into position. A little bit surprised that Lothlorien have not noticed this, because those javelins immediately getting some good value off here on some strong Lothlorien spearmen. Now they're going to retreat as well. So a bit of a hit and run there, actually. They're not. Y2K, I think he's like experienced player Y2K. I think he realised that, well, he thought that he would have to retreat them after just the one volley after getting lucky, but still caught a little bit flat-footed here, the defenders, and allowing him to get some really nice value. To be fair as well, Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters are decently armoured. Against Elven Arrows they will still struggle a little bit, but you know, against the Marchballs they'll stand up reasonably. And they'll be able to blow a hole right through this unit of Lothlorien Spears. Losses that the defenders can scarcely afford to take here. Meanwhile, these Corsair crossbows have not been having a great time of it. Again, might be a little bit early for Umbar to be committing one of these units forward. It's why you often open up with a unit of basic archers like Belagairs, because then you can draw the fire of the defenders with something, but it's with a unit that isn't all that important, whereas the Corsair crossbows can be. You can see here Gondor infantry have taken the majority of the damage. A few of the Fountain Guard fell, but not many. The Gondor infantry being the shield for them. Meanwhile over here, I think the Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters are going to try and retreat now as well, yeah, because I mean there are 2 units of March Wardens. As soon as 2 units of Elven Arrows, or Archers I should say, start opening up with their arrows on you, it's going to be pretty grisly for this unit of Javelins. They may have used up all their ammunition already, however, in which case you can see Y2K trying to get them into a compact formation, try and make them as survivable as possible to absorb as much of that ammunition as he can, because one unit absorbing all that ammo means it's a lot of the more fragile units, the soft underbelly of Rhudaur and Harad, that won't have to take quite as much Coldfell Maidens now pushing in. Javelin Cavalry. The Knights of Inumnus are going to move forward. You can see the Coldfell Maidens also taking damage from the Arthedain marksmen from up on the cliffs. They do move back. Not a huge amount of losses, in fact, just the one. Not the most resilient cavalry, the Coldfell Maidens, but they're all about the damage they can deal, and they're going to try and move forward to do a bit of hit and run on to the Knights of Inumnus. They do get their volley off. Will they be able to kill off any of the Knights of Inumnus? No. Goes to show how strong and tanky they are, and they will be able to catch the Coldfells in melee as well, which, needless to say, will not go too well for the Maidens from the north. But javelins being used, trying to take away one of the dangerous units that the defenders have at their disposal as it pertains to cavalry. A lot of cavalry bottled up here near the grand manor house that Longbottom seems to sport. Still firing away. Yeah, the Warlord a little bit naive here. I mean, if you see them do it, they're going after some clansmen. But Rhudaur clansmen are not really worth going after either. Very basic, well shielded. Again, a little bit naive, like I said. If you see that the enemy is making no steps to stop doing what you're doing, alarm bells should be sounding in your head, and it's like, maybe this isn't the best course of action, especially if you're up against a player that you know has played the game a lot, like Y2K. Also, crossbows still, I mean, they're still firing away, they've still got their ammunition, you need to finish them off, otherwise slowly but surely they will rack up a good kill count. Started off dealing with these Corsairs pretty well. That has ceased to be the case, though. Gondor taking losses, slowly but surely. Meanwhile, the Grey Company thinking about moving out. They need to be very careful, though. If they get into range of any archers, they're going to be in trouble. Interesting to see the Rhudaur and Harad cavalry over on this side of the settlement. Opens the door potentially for a bit of a sally out against them more directly. You can see there is cavalry hovering around this location as well. Gondor infantry moving a little bit further forwards. Here come the Alcarondas faithful though. Yeah, like I said, Gondor started off dealing with that one unit of crossbows quite well, but they're floundering a little bit now, which is a little bit of a shame. In come the Alcarondas faithful. Going to do a bit more damage to the Gondor infantry. More arrows coming in, but targeting the faithful and not the crossbows. You're going to do very little damage to Alcarondas faithful with Gondor archers, to be brutally honest. It's not going to be the winning formula that you might want it to be. Grey Company firing away. You can see Rhudaur once again, Y2K, bearing the brunt of the Elven Fury with his most heavily shielded units. And the Elves, what will they do? South Rhun archers moving forward. Rhudaur and Harad playing the long game, as they should. Because if they charge into the teeth of an Elven defence, they're two factions which simply will not respond too well to that sort of thing. Like I said, a little bit overly cautious on the part of Numenor and Rhun, if I'm being honest. Like, you should be engaging in this sort of situation, I think, because all you're really doing is elongating the situation. You're going to take losses at the hands of the enemy skirmishes. There's no avoiding that. So 5v3, suck it up, get on with it. Alcarondas faithful, taking shots from the Gondor archers as well. Sequestered away in the trees. Still, these crossbows, again, they're going to be able to recoup their losses if this is allowed to continue. And most of Umbar's army also waiting in the wings to move forward. Again, being very patient. Ones of the north on the roof of that smile. Arthedain marksmen firing away now. And again, huge range advantage. What are they going to be firing at? I mean, steel bows, Rim. The steel bows will be more tanky and durable than the Rim, but neither one of them is going to fall in droves to a unit of basic Arthedain marksmen. But still, it lets the attackers know that, listen, you come into our dojo, you're not going to be able to outrange us because of the huge hill advantage we have. As soon as you come into range, it's on. Forward come the steel bowmen, and they do have an opportunity here, the steel bows. If they can get close enough, they can target something like the Fountain Guard. Probably the best unit they can target on the field, to be honest. Scionrim are there. Plenty of heavy spears on this side of the field, so withstanding punishment should not really be an issue. Pinnethgalen cavalry motoring over to that side as well. Still this poor unit of Lorenan spears. The Marchwalls of the Wood taking a bit of damage now as well from the South Rhun archers. The elves responding in kind with a unit of their March Wardens, which will make quick work of the Southrons that are armoured only with wood and wicker. They got the right idea still. Even if they end up losing these Southron archers, they're just poking and prodding Lothlorien, making them use up more of their ammunition. Clansmen are here, Rhudaur. A lot of Muhards in the back as well. Head over here, Umbar getting... yeah, look at that unit of Gondor infantry. It has been torn asunder. Unit of Rhun Rhudaur Guard being targeted, but it'll take a long time again for basic Gondor archers. It's sort of... you can tell when a player is on the newer end of things, because their choice of targets with their missiles tends to be a little more questionable. Arthedain marksman targeting down the Gamprim. That's a good target for the Arthedain marksman. Straying a little bit too close to the fire there, the Gamprim. I would save them for a little bit later on. The time has come, however, for a bit of a melee engagement. I'm not entirely sure what Arthedain are hoping to achieve with this. I mean, chasing off the steel bows is all well and good, but you're going to be isolating a unit of Dunedain infantry that you're going to need in the main defence. Speaking of which, we do have the first genuine melee engagement, really, in this fight. And it is Rhudaur who is enacting it. The Rhudaur swordsmen, a few Ettenmoor's troll hunters still in there. They will, of course, be horribly outclassed by Loren-armed infantry units on the front line, but numbers are the order of the day here for Rhudaur, as they always will be if they're facing off against Lothlorien. March ones firing away, still those Southron archers being annoying, and I have to say I do like the way the attackers have approached this so far. Maybe a little bit overly cautious on the part of Numenor and Rhun, but other than that, I think they've played this quite well so far, and that bodes ill for the defenders. As I often say, the noose would appear to be tightening. Ettenmoor's troll hunters that do still have ammunition, and they have recognised that, and they are targeting down the Rhudaur stalwarts. And they have the opportunity here to fire into Woodland Protectors. Yeah, that's the unit they're going to be going after. Gets rid of a bit of the DPS that this Elven Javelin unit is capable of dealing. A lot of big damage coming in here. But Lorien, for the time being, they'll be comfortable in melee, but we'll see how that lasts. What have we here? Still nothing in terms of melee over here. The Numenorian steel bows thinking of moving forwards. More of their units getting closer to the walls, but a lot of their armies still further back. And from the front, I mean, Umbar, it's a little more understandable why they are being overly cautious as well, because they only have themselves to rely upon. The other two entrances, they're going to be attacked by two armies rather than just the one. Grey Company getting very close to the battle. Poison arrows and body-piercing arrows finding their way into the Ettenmoor's troll hunters, but the DPS of the Grey Company has been significantly reduced after their early game escapades. Rhudaur obviously going to be struggling on the front line here against the mighty elves. I'm not sure myself. Numenor and Rhun have got quite a lot of their units quite far away from the main settlement. Alcarondas Faithful coming forwards again, having charged that Gondor infantry into submission. I mean, the Pinneth Galen cavalry is far healthier than the Alcarondas Faithful, but that won't last. I mean, this is exactly what the Alcarondas Faithful are built to do. The Pinneth Galens will get absolutely massacred by these melee knights. If you were going to do this, again, it should have been a unit of stronger cavalry than that. I mean, the Pinneth Galen cavalry, probably the worst choice of cavalry you could have sent down there of everything you had other than the Grey Company. The Mithrandir's retinue would have put up a better fight, but yeah, it's not great. Again, decision making is questionable, and when that's the case, the defenders often end up struggling as the battle wears on. We shall see if that continues to be the case. Southrons continuing to shoot into the March Woods, who seem to have run their ammo supply dry, which is another bad sign. Blackwolves on the front line, they'll not do as well against Elven infantry as they would under normal circumstances, but they will still have the advantage when it comes to damage over the other Rhudaur units that are in here, and they will last longer because of their second hit point. But as soon as that's gone, of course, their lack of other defensive virtues means they will get torn apart by the elves pretty quickly. Arthedain marksman with the upgrade, weathering the Nar Rim storm pretty well, and if I were hidden, I would keep his Arthedain troops right where they are. Belagaya footmen. Let's Gondor archers trudging down the hill as well. Rhun Rhudaur guard. I mean, to be fair, the attackers have done quite well here. They've set themselves up quite nicely. And the defenders, in the face of that, have not made the best decisions so far. It's been in minor ways, but these things pile up, and as the defenders, you can't really afford to be making even minor errors in judgment, otherwise you will very quickly find the battle starting to get away from you. But with something like the Woodland Protectors in position here, they're going to need to use their javelins fairly quickly, I would suggest. Throwing into the side of this front line as Rhudaur add another unit of clansmen, piling on the pressure. For the time being, though, they're content to just use this unit of March Wardens to do the damage. These Attenmore Troll Hunters continuing to try and use their javies. Once again, they're going to throw them into the front of those Woodland Protectors and get the first shot off. I like the fact the Woodland Protectors are going after the front line, though. Because they do need to make a dent in that front line. Umbar, though, you can see the devastation wrought on the basic Gondorian Lancers. Rhun Rhudaur guard continuing to fire in. You can see there's only 10 of them that remain. And now we have a fight on the back edge of the settlement. Evendim Spearmen holding the initial lines. Numenorian steel bows will do the business against them in melee, especially with the backup of the Balagai units. Scion Rim getting support from the Narim as they fire in as well. Not a particularly well organised front line this from Arthedain either. The fact that they've had this long to sit back in shape and get contingency plans ready, the fact that Numenor are able to just sort of go around the defence they've set up, is pretty poor, if I'm being honest. Knights of Numenor charging in, but they'll very quickly find themselves getting swamped by the Balagai footmen. In comes some Arthedain men-at-arms, who will outperform the Balagai footmen in melee, so at least they're responding to this quickly. But this should never have been allowed to develop as far as it has in the first place. Umbar, are they going to move forward? Pinnithgale and cavalry routing again. Genuine fire arrows coming forth from the Rhun Rhudaur Royal Guard. And then over here, we have shots from the Southrons. Arthedain Rangers are in position as well. Again, this is not going to go well here for the elves. If they can't respond to being... Lothlorien should never be being bullied at range by Harad and Rhudaur. If you are, if that's what's happening, something's gone wrong. And they are. Such is the way of things, and indeed that has been a problem. I mean, one of the problems with Hobbiton and with Longbottom, because of how open they are, is the fact that the attackers can use skirmishes to their advantage, and they have done in this battle so far. They've done a really good job of that. As the defenders, though, you have to try and at least not allow the attackers to dictate the pace of things when it comes to the skirmish game, because if you do, it's not going to go that well for you. Dunedain Rangers are in position. Now they're in position, they need to start firing because they only have so long here. Dunedain Peacekeepers doing the business here against Scion Rim that have been added to try and help the Shield Guard and Steel Bows. A lot of good units over here. The Balagai are overextending maybe a little bit. A lot was asked of them, to be fair. But the damage may have already been done on their part because they have buckled the front line considerably. We shall see. What have we here? Umbar warriors. You can hear the ripping of those body-piercing projectiles, and something like the March Warns of the Wood will take horrendous losses because they're not very well armoured. Lorien archers move forward. Umbar started to get in on the action when it comes to engaging in melee. Alcarondas Legion will probably struggle quite a lot against the Citadel Guard, actually, especially given the fact that there's reinforcements which can be committed very promptly. On the front line, however, against basic Gondor infantry, the Alcarondas Legion will be very, very dominant indeed. Alcarondas Faithful still alive, just about. Dunedain Rangers are now ripping shots into the front line, and this is leading to a bit of a collapse. And this is where I would say I would criticise the attackers a bit. All of their reinforcements are miles away from the front line in an effort to avoid getting shot by the archers that are all up on that hill. The problem with doing that, though, is your reinforcements are pretty far away. Now, this group here is close, but even this group has to sort of go up and around and go uphill, so it's going to be pretty slow. And the defenders here on the front foot now. Raven Helms of Caer Andros moving forward, swinging those mighty greatswords. They'll do a decent job there. Coldfell Maidens firing those missiles. Ognar Rim. Reinforcements are on the way now, but it's already looking pretty grisly on the front line. I mean, it's an even fight so far, but that's just because of the sheer quality of those heavy spears. The Beastie does have some cohort on the way, so all is not lost. The attackers can stabilise their attack here, and to be honest with you, don't know how well it's going to go. I mean, just a single unit of Alcarumbas Legion, Royal Guard as well. The Fountain Guard are going to be a real problem for the Alcarumbas Legion, that much is certain. Fighting evenly with the Citadel Guard, there's a second unit of Citadel Guard which can be committed forward, which I would do right now, to be honest, to gain the advantage in that particular fight. For Rodrim Javelins, they're going to do horrid damage to Lothlorien. I would say this is where the attacks have been at their best, to be honest with you. On this side with Rhudaur and Harad, they've really done a good job, I would say. And the elves haven't responded in the fashion that they needed to. Lorenan Swordmasters getting blown away by Ferodrim Javelins and also some arrow fire from the back. Very depleted Southron archers, but still, every arrow that hits is going to contribute. They've got a lot left in reserve here, the attackers. I mean, well, the attackers, but also the defenders. So I would imagine things are going to kick into high gear pretty quickly as the Ferodrim Javelins get onto the front line. Dunherd Champions over in Dak use that unit model as well. Knights of Numenor moving backwards. Numenorian cohort trying to squeeze around the flank. It's happening for a second time. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice? Hidden has not learnt his lesson. And he is going to be punished accordingly for it, as the Numenorian cohort will make far quicker work of the Arthedain marksman than... He does have the Troll Slayers here, but he's not going to utilise them. This is a problem. You need to stabilise this front line. Organisation is key as the defenders, and if you lose cohesion, it's pretty much the end of days. Fountain Guard are moving forward. Gondor doing well on the front line, as you would probably expect against Umbar, given they are only one army. But as long as they keep Gondor occupied, as long as they just keep them engaged, they'll be doing their job. Corsair crossbowmen going to try and get a good shot. Can they? Marksmen of Caer Andros are there. Alcarondas Legion doing very well actually against the Citadel Guard. Maybe they were in guard mode and shield ball, so they were focusing on defence and not landing enough hits. And they haven't committed the other unit either. Another example of a minor mistake, but these are adding up here for the defenders, and I think they've already dug themselves their own grave, to be honest with you. I mean, they're starting to do some real damage with the Kindred now, but it's looking like they're already taking damage from something. Taking damage from what, I wonder? Ah, it's the Muhard Beast Hunters throwing their javelins up here, which is the problem. Going after the Kindred, and already they are good and bloodied. Those split shots, however, are doing big damage to Rhudaur and Harad on the front line. Exactly the sort of thing which should have been happening earlier, really, from a defensive perspective. You need to be dictating the ranged fight so you can do this type of damage throughout the battle rather than just at intervals where the attackers run their ammo supply dry. Some pikes heading to the front line. Javelins are still there. The rangers have moved. Wardens of Minas Ithil firing at Umbar. So reinforcements heading to the front line to try and turn back Rhun and Numenor, and they have actually been successful by the looks of things. So not all is lost for the defenders. Have managed to stabilise things, but Numenorian cohort's still over here. The Knights of Numenor haven't been used all that well either, if I'm being brutally honest, but they're over here trying to support the marksmen. Seafarers moving forward, those javelins could be useful. Will having all that cavalry prove to be a bit of a problem? We shall see. Dunedain Rangers firing their ammunition right up into the air, which is a bad sign. They're not going to be getting the most out of their body piercing with that at all. That there was Gandalf. His Mithrandir's retinue getting shot. Those armour-piercing projectiles cleaving through the Balakathak's guard as Gondor and Umbar duke it out, as they often have in these battle replays on the front line for dominance. Two infantry powerhouses. Those Mithrandir's retinue need to move, otherwise those crossbows are going to completely destroy them. Front lines have gone pretty well. Are they just going to charge right into the front here? Or are they going to try and go around? Well, I mean, either way, the fences are in the way now, so it's not going to go well for them either way. Are the fences going to shoot? Yeah, they are. But cavalry needs to leave. I mean, the defenders, for all the cavalry they've brought, they haven't used it all that well, I must be honest. Lucky they didn't shoot at them, to be honest with you, but the fencers are going to try and dismantle the Gondorian front line. Still over here, Alcarondas Legion now being fought to a standstill after the second unit of Citadel Guard was committed forward. A little bit late, but better late than never. And then over here, the elves are just about hanging on, but they've got very little in the way of infantry left at this stage. And Rhudaur will ultimately be successful in pushing them back with just the application of a couple more units. Trollshire Axe Throwers will assist in that regard, killing off more elves. Coldfell Maidens going around the back. Witch Realm Enslavers are going to come forward, which is really a statement of intent. Either you commit more units to this choke point, or we're going to make it up this hill. Most of the others are out of ammo skirmishes, to be fair, but they're going to need more Trollshire Axe Throwers. What are they going to fire at, I wonder? Going to fire at the Woodland Protectors. Karos Galadon's Guardians as well are moving into place now. So they do want to keep hold of that choke point. Still, dismounted Fornoster Rain Knights on the front line now as well. Royal Legion of Armenlos being added, so it's been a real meat grinder so far. Gamprim moving up. Ardenaim Shadow Bows as well. Dragon's Wrath Crossbowman. Serpent Guardsmen just sort of milling around back there as well. Dunedain Troll Slayers whipping out their axes. They'll do very nicely actually against particularly the Numenor units. That extra AP will be instrumental in bringing them down if the defenders are to be successful. All three of these defending factions don't lack for archers, which may be a factor in how they're making life so difficult for the attackers here, despite the events of this battle so far. Corsair Fencers being engaged here by some Ravenhelms, Veterans of Osgiliath still with their bows out. The time for archers is coming to an end though, I think. They're going to need all hands to the pump, really. Everyone on the front line, everyone chipping in melee. Fortunately the veterans can do that, but you really should be using up your ammunition before that. Javelins from the Beast Hunters coming in, trying to deal with the Karos Galadon's Guardians, and it's been a torrid time for Lothlorien over here. They will have got a lot of kills against Rhudaur and Harad, but not once in this battle have I felt like they've had the upper hand on this choke point, really. I've always felt as if Rhudaur and Harad knew what they were doing, and they've engineered the situation very, very nicely. Sending forward some more reinforcements to go with the Javelin fire as well, some Rhudaur Axemen for even more armour-piercing bite. Lorien will do quite well against the lower melee defense of those Axemen, but even so, they're still going to take damage. Narrim routing after they tried to push their way through the line, some Evendim Spearmen and Wardens of the White Tower seeing to that. Still, the reinforcements being a little bit far away has been to Rhun and Numenor's detriment, I would say, over here. Riders of the Golden Wood using those Silver Thorns to try and break up this assault. Gondor Archers moving over. Still those Corsair Crossbows. This second unit of Corsair Crossbows, they've had a few shots go into them, but for the most part they've been able to take their pick of the Gondorian units that they have perceived. They're going after the Veterans of Osgiliath now. Most of the units they've been going after have been high tier, indeed they are. Bad news for Gondor, this. As more of their valuable troops, higher tier troops, bite the dust. Firing into the back of those... Well, to be fair, those are Naru Naaru Sentinels, a worthwhile target to go after, but they're so heavily armoured, the Sentinels, that unless you've got a really nice shot on them, they will actually not fall all that quickly. Still got Champions of Nafra in reserve as well. If the Witch Realm Enslavers do fail, these pikes are going to be dominant in a fight where there's no support coming forth from any javelins or archers from the attackers. Loran-armed archers firing a few volleys in there as well. Still warband, still numbers back there from Harad which can be utilised, including Pikeman, which will be worrying. I think it's last roll of the dice time for the defenders, really. If they can get their elites onto the front line and do damage quickly, maybe they have a chance, but with units like Demons of the Desert, Sapphire Blazemen, even if they can do that, the support the attackers have in place I think is going to be just a little bit too much for them. Unfortunately for them. Vets of Osgiliath. Again, ripping shots. Wardens of the White Tower. Corsair Crossbows out of ammunition now, so being thrown to the wolves after the good job they've done. being thrown in against Wardens of the White Tower, and that's going about as well for them as you would expect. Umbar struggling, of course, but that is understandable. Umbar won't last much longer though, so the attackers, if they're going to get up here into the estate at the centre of Longbottom, they'll need to do it more quickly than they're currently doing so. I think they'll be fine regardless, but Evandem Spearmen are here plugging the gap that had appeared. Seafarers of Nindamos on the front line. Rhudaur Rangers still doing their thing, and they've certainly racked up a good kill count for themselves. Hard to keep track of the archers, but some of them clearly for the defenders have been used quite well. Coldfell Maidens in the background. Will all that cavalry prove to be a waste for the attackers? I'm still not sure. Kindred of Caliborn, only 4 of them, but still trying to do their thing. Demons of the Desert in melee? That's surprising. There goes the Rhudaur General. Run through with an Elven Pike. Muhard Beast Hunters using their clubs in melee. They're shaken, but winning this fight ultimately. Another full unit of Rhudaur Axemen heading to the front line. If they have anything else in melee they can commit. Well, they do, but it's Arthedain's unit, so Lorien will need to call upon help from the humans. Lothlorien on a guard. Narrow and Iron Sentinels slowly but surely making the progress they need to against the Citadel Guardsmen. They are still getting shot by those veterans. Dismounted Fornosterine Knights cleaning up the Harbingers of Castamere alongside the Marksmen of Caer Andros. As are the Wardens of the White Tower with the Corsair Crossbows. It's a close battle this, I will say. Rise of the Goldenwood still firing in as another unit of Gamperim makes their way to the front. Arthedain Shadowbows trying to move backwards. Rhudaur Rangers, Wardens of the White Tower, they're trying to come up and around the flank here, these Eastron Warriors. Interesting to see Eastron Warriors still alive at this late stage. Coldfell Maidens. Sapphire Blazemen still strong in melee as well, trying to go up and around the flanks, not just fight the enemy head on. Wardens of the White Tower, so 2 units of the Wardens of the White Tower. The other one coming in here, and they will make very, very quick work indeed of these Eastron Warriors. It's a sketchy situation this for Rhun and Numenor. For all of their caution early on, it hasn't really saved them from the wrath of the defenders, as I knew it really wouldn't. You're only delaying the inevitable in this sort of situation. Coldfell Maidens trying to push their way through the line at this point, and it does look as though, finally, Harad and Rhudaur are going to get what they want, and they're going to pour through the settlement here. Demons of the Desert are going to rip these woodland protectors apart. They're decent in melee, not as good as the other 2 units of Trollmen. Yeah, this is a problem. As soon as cohesion is lost like this, the defence is going to fall apart. If they had the choke points locked up, and they could keep the attackers bottled up, they had a chance, especially given the fact that, you know, Rhudaur and Harad, most of their units over here are actually lower end stuff, the Champions of Nathrat notwithstanding. The rest is just Southrons and basic Rhudaur troops, but now they're going to be able to flood across the settlement. And that, you would imagine, will probably be that. Finally, I think the defenders are going to be broken with that move. Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen throwing their daggers into the Wardens of the White Tower, doing some nice damage. And again, it's a weird choice from Hidden to send his Dismounted Knights of Numenor over here. Like, I guess he's going to try and sort of break this force over here as quickly as possible, but it's too late for that. If you were going to commit them, it should have been sooner. Arthedain, I think, let Lothlorien down quite badly in that situation. They needed reinforcements desperately, and they went ignored. And unfortunately, the last hope for the defenders died with that Lothlorien front line, I think. And that is on, primarily, I would say, Arthedain, because Gondor had to hold back Umbar alone. And they had, you know, the most damning thing really is the fact that Arthedain had reserves and elected not to use them for that purpose. Fornosterine Knights being flooded over by Rhudaur and Muhard units. Riders of the Golden Wood will ultimately find themselves in a sticky spot as well, especially if they stay in melee against Axemen, who will do a lot of nice damage in sustained combat. Gondorian General falls at the hands of the Haradrim. Pike's doing a good job. Rhun Unmounted Company still alive. Veterans of Osgiliath still up here on this little hillock. What are they firing at, I wonder? Nothing. They're going to need to get into a different position. Harbingers of Castamere. Umbar still just about alive, but very depleted. Naren Iron Sentinels will finish off the Citadel Guard, of course. The Lothians, conversely, will make very quick work of South Rhun and Rhudaur units. Very wide gulf in terms of the quality there. Not so much now, though, with the Champions of Nafrat and with the pikes from behind. The Lothians will find themselves destroyed. The estate now is in the hands of the attackers, and the defenders in trouble. All hope would appear to be lost. Colfell Maidens are going to charge in. Oh, no, they're not. Rhudaur Axemen coming in here to help against the Lorien Mounted Company. Forward come the pikes as well. Yeah, I'd say Harad and Rhudaur were the attacking army. The armies in general that impressed me the most in this battle, to be honest with you. They played it exactly as they should have, and executed very, very nicely. The other attackers did okay as well. Umbar really didn't have much of a choice but to play the game in the way they did, because they were on their own. So I'll give a mention to them as well. Rhun and Numenor a little overcautious, I think, but perhaps understandably so. Colfell Maidens in the backfield there. The Black Serpents moving forward, the War Beasts. Perhaps now is the time to commit them forward. Cummel's Shadow Guard swinging their halberds. They may be halberds that they wield, but they do use them like an axe. So much more of an aggressive unit this, and they're going to sandwich the front line now. South Rhun pikemen completing a surround. And that is a real problem for the defenders, needless to say. What have we got over here? Lorien Mounted Company charging downhill, but South Rhun Warband spears will give as good as they get in melee. Armour-piercing bite that they have as well. Whatever happened to those veterans? They're still up on that hill over there. Serpent Guard potentially have the opening to try and shut them down, at least on a temporary basis. And there's some Numenor units in here as well. Naren Iron Raw Guard with their blue capes, Balkoth Sapphire Bladesmen. And they do still have Eastron Guard, Cummel's Chosen, Pharazim Swordmaster right in the thick of it. And the attackers in the ascendancy. Let's see here. South Rhun Warband. What are they going to do, I wonder? Veterans of Osgiliath are there. Colfell Maidens charging in. Through the veterans, in come the Serpent Guard. Champions of Nafrat are back there. Is there anything escaping? Yeah, I suppose there is. The Lorien Mounted Company are over here charging into something. Whatever it was, I think they destroyed it utterly. A very grisly sight here. South Rhun Warband, and I think the Demons of the Desert were still over here, weren't they? I mean, the Watchers of the Goldenwood were here, so I think the Demons of the Desert might be completely gone, and the South Rhun Warband will soon join them. But yeah, the Elven Cavalry has now been caught and will be overwhelmed by the Haradrim Riders. There are the Champions of Nafrat. Defeat for Gondor on the front. Veterans of Osgiliath fighting valiantly alongside the Numenor Knights. But it's all over for them. The Elves will be the last ones standing, purely on the merit of those Watchers of the Goldenwood in the corner, fighting only a basic unit of South Rhuns for the time being. But it is victory here at Longbottom. Just over the 10% mark, but relatively close to it. And I think the attackers were good value for their win here, to be honest with you. They played this battle in a far better way, I would say, than the defenders. Just all those little mistakes, like I said, just added up over the course of the battle to eventually make it an untenable situation for the defenders. It's a tough settlement to defend, though. Open settlements like this always are, because you can't rely on the settlement doing a lot of the work for you and claiming that skirmish fight. And I think the defenders were too passive in allowing the attackers to claim the initiative for that. Champions of Nafrat will do the business. Ooh, those Watchers of the Goldenwood are going to get charged by the War Beasts. In they come. Big charge bonus on them. Huge mass as well, so they're just going to go right through them. They've got sort of like a bone swords as well. They're almost like clubs more than swords, which is cool. Very tribal aesthetic to the men of Far Harad. That's going to be that from them. There goes the Arthedain general. surrounded by Southrons and Easterons, being utterly overwhelmed. And I guess actually the elves over here probably will get killed first because of the arrival of the war beasts. Yeah, they're going to die first, so it is actually going to be Arthedain and Gondor on this front line over here that do last the longest, I think. It's going to be a close run thing. There goes Haldir. Customary doom. Yeah, so they will last a little longer, I think. I guess it must be the veterans who were over on this side of the engagement. Someone's still alive in this mess. Not for much longer though, I would imagine. Yep, they died in there somewhere. Well, there we go. A good performance from the attackers, like I said, and they were definitely good value for their win here. So big thank you to Beastie70 for sending this one to me. And like I said, I think the only time I've shown Longbottom before was when it wasn't called Longbottom. I recognised the layout of the map, but it didn't have the Hobbit assets on it before, I don't think. And it was a long time ago that I showed it anyway. So it's good to see a relatively new map, fresh content for the channel. Lorien getting the most kills, but like I said, even though that is the case, I think they constantly were on the back foot against Rhudaur and Harad. And I think even though Harad got the least amount of kills, they deserve a lot of credit for how they acquitted themselves in this battle. And I would certainly give themselves and Rhudaur the MVPs in this situation. Umbar as well, considering they were on their own on that front line, did nicely against Gondor, getting good value off of stuff like their crossbows, and their infantry did decently as well, considering the quality of the Gondorian troops they were having to face off against. Numenor and Rhudaur, well, Numenor and Rhun, I should say. A little bit overly cautious at the start, and it didn't really save them in the end, because I will say the defenders probably did the right thing in committing most strength to deal with them, and they did. So I mean, you can't really argue with that, because it was the most dangerous threat given the quality that Numenor and Rhun together can bring, and the fact that they offset one another's weaknesses quite nicely. But yeah, in the end there wasn't much more they could have done when the attack got going. You could argue that given the fact that they were struggling on the front line for a little bit, they could have used their ranged units to a little bit better effect, but that's being harsh on them, I would think. You know, as the attackers, you don't tend to expect to have the ranged advantage, so it's a little bit much to ask. As for the defenders, like I said, several little mistakes really did add up. All three of the players, I would say, made noticeable ones as well. Hidden not really reinforcing his units, his allies properly at the times that it was really required. Gondor not choosing to engage at certain times and leaving depleted units of skirmishers to slowly pick holes in his line. And Lorien just allowing Harad and Rhudaur to push them around at range, which should never really be the case. But let's see what did the damage for Numenor, who did decently in terms of a kill count. Farazim Swordmasters committed close to the end, but obviously they were able to really flex their muscles a little bit as the fight went on. Cohort breaking 100, Shield Guard breaking 100. In a situation like this, though, you can't really expect to have huge kill counts, but even so, the quality of Numenor and the survivability with that armour proving to be a key factor, I would imagine. But yeah. Big thank you to Beastie70 once again, and a big thank you to all of the players for being a part of this battle replay. Now, you may have noticed that I don't know whether this battle will come out before or after the first Silmarillion replay that this has taken effect on. I think it will be after, but you may have noticed that Reshade is gone, and I've turned it on to Shader version 2, so we've got shadows and slightly sharper look all around, albeit it doesn't have quite the same vibrancy that Reshade provides, but I think I will be sticking with this in the future, to be honest with you, unless there's a huge sort of backlash against it, because as far as I can tell, it's stable, and Reshade, there are certain types of battle where it really does actually make it look really quite nice. There are certain other types of battle, however, where it makes it look worse, whereas this, I think we sort of just cut out the middle ground, or sort of cut out the extremes and just go for the middle ground, really. And I think the addition of shadows in particular, the fact that there were no shadows when I had Reshade on, because turning Reshade on with version 2 makes it unstable. So it's sort of like the limit of what the game can accomplish, really. But the lack of shadows with Reshade on version 1 was starting to bother me a little bit, to be honest with you, and the fact that version 2's got a little bit, you know, it's got a few upgrades in certain areas, I think it's worth it. But I'm willing to listen to feedback on that. This one probably, like I said, I don't know exactly what order I'm going to be releasing these in, because I had to record all of the Silmarillion replays all in a row, and I probably won't be doing them sort of one after the other, so This one will probably be in the middle of them somewhere, probably just after Christmas Day, I would imagine this one's probably going to come out. Maybe even the last battle replay we do before the new year comes around. If that's the case, 2020's been something. Hopefully 2021 will be an improvement. We shall have to wait and see. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.